Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, which is YOMA Yud Aleph. We begin 6 lines from the top of the Amud. We discussed the halacha of mezuzah in Lishkas Parhedrin yesterday, and today the Gemara resumes discussing this topic of mezuzah, which is discussed primarily here and in Maseches Menachos. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon Bisharecha. The pasuk says, Uchsavtam al mezuzah ispeisecha bisharecha. Place a mezuzah on the doorpost of your home and on your gateways. Bisharecha. What does it come to include? Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon Bisharecha echad shari batim, whether entranceways to homes, vechad shari chatzeris, or gateways to courtyards, vechad shari medinais, or entryways to walled provinces, vechad shari ayoris, or gateways to walled cities, as we have in Yerushalayim today. If you take a look at the sha'arim on the way into the old city, we have mezuzahs affixed to the doorpost. In all these cases, yesh behen chayvas mitzvah l'makom, there's an obligation to Hashem, meaning to affix a mezuzah on these locations. Mishum shenemar uchsavtam al mezuzah ispeisecha uvish arecha. Amalei abayler of Safra. I have a question for you. Hani abuli de mechuzah. What about these gateways of the town Mechuzah, which was occupied mostly by Israelim? Why doesn't the shar of that city have a mechuzah, have a mezuzah? My time of dulu rabbanon mezuzah. Why didn't the rabbanon apply a mezuzah to that shar? Amarle, he responded, Hanu chizuk. This isn't really an entranceway. The entranceway to the city is from elsewhere. What you're speaking about is just a chizuk. It's a reinforcement, a structural reinforcement. It's an archway which is supporting Hanu chizuk la'akra de kuvi. This was the name of the structure built above it. It was merely supporting this enclosure above it, akra de kuvi, hu diavidi. That's what they're made for. So these arches are merely supporting the building above it, and therefore it's not considered an entryway. It's not a shar, not a mokim knisa to the city, and therefore it's pata from mezuzah. Omar, he responded, okay, I understand it's not considered the entryway to the city, but it provides access to the structure which is above it. Va'akra de kuvi, gufa, for that itself, va'akra de kuvi, to buy mezuzah, it should need a mezuzah because it's used to access that building above it. The isba dira l'shaymer beis asurim, because in that akra de kubi structure, there's a place of residence for the shaymer beis asurim, for the prison guard, and that turns it into a place of residence. It's a makom dira, and any entryway to that makom dira is chayv mezuzah. The Tana, as we learned in the Bryce, beis hakneses sheish by beis dira lechazan, beis lechazan hakneses. Although a shul, according to this Bryce, will be pata from mezuzah, it's not a makom of dwelling, but if it has a place of dira for the chazon hakneses, it's a reference to the shamas, the attendant of the shul. If there's some sort of room in which he lives, and that's annexed to the shul, chayevas b'mezuzah, the beis hakneses is chayev mezuzah because it's serving this fellow's makom dira here as well. The shar of the city of Mechuzah that I'm referring to, although it's not the primary entryway to the city, and on account of that it wouldn't be chayev mezuzah, but it's providing access to the building above it, which it's supporting, which has a makom dira for the shaymin beis hasurim. Elo Amar Abaye, I'll tell you the reason why there is no mezuzah on the entryway to that city, mishum sakana. We're concerned about putting oneself in danger. Rashi explains the king might say, well, what are you up to there? Hanging up these mystical-looking parchments on the shar of my city, you're doing kishuf, and this might put them into sakana. Therefore, the Chachamim exempted them from the Chiyuv Mezuzah. The Sanya, as we learned, Mezuzahs Yochid, Nivdekes Pa'amayim B'Shavua. How often does one check his privately owned mezuzah? Mezuzahs Yochid, Nivdekes is checked Pa'amayim B'Shavua, twice in 7 years. So once about every 3.5 years to make sure that it's intact, it's still kosher. V'shel Rabbim, a mezuzah owned by the Rabbim, Pa'amayim B'Yovel, need only to be checked twice in 50 years. Why that difference? Says Rashi, 10 lines from the top of the Amud. Nivdekes, you check your private mezuzah twice in 7 years. Shema Nirkava, perhaps it got soil rotted, the parchment got spoiled and ruined, or got stolen. Only pamayim b'yovel. Why? Only twice in 50 years. Says Rashi, it's just out of a practical consideration. Anything that belongs to the rabbin, we don't want to burden too much. Why? It becomes too difficult, then everyone relies on the other person. The Gemara elsewhere says, the pot cooking for two people, for shutfim, keder to be shutfi. Loy chamimar, loy krira. It's never hot nor too cold. It's somewhere in the middle because none of them are really taking care of it properly. So it's a mashal here as well. If it's going to be too difficult to check this mezuzah, nobody's going to check it. And therefore, we're lenient to allow it to be done twice in 50 years, in which case, they certainly will look after it that much. Continues the Gemara. Okay, now we want to have a raya regarding the concept of sakana, which was the reason why they exempted the mezuzah from the shar of mechuzah. Let's continue with the brayse. Vam Rabbi Yehuda, Maaseh. There was a story by Artivin, Echad, this fellow called Artivin, Shayaboidek mezuzahis b'shuke'elin shal tzipur. So he was checking the kashrus of the mezuzahs in the upper market of tzipur. So it was a publicly visible mezuzah, and he was engaged in bedika. And what happened? He was placed in danger as a result. This officer finds him. What are you doing? You're involved in kishuv, you're endangering the inhabitants of the city. And he was in great sakana and he extorted a bribe from him. In order to extract himself from danger, this fellow had to pay off the officer 1,000 zuz. So we see that it's not worth it. Putting mezuzahs in public places, which might result in endangering the people and bringing into heavy financial loss. And therefore, Chachamim exempted the shar of mechuzah from having a mezuzah. Says Gemara, how could this have happened? This person was involved in a mitzvah, checking the mezuzah. How could a sakana have reached him? V'amar b'lezer, shluchi mitzvah ein nizoyken. If a fellow is involved in doing a mitzvah, he's protected from harm. It depends. When it's an established, it's a common occurrence. It's something which is shchiach, the hezek is established, is known. Then it's different. Even if he's involved in a mitzvah, you must protect yourself. It's like a neis. We're not soymech on a neis. We find with Shmuel Hanavi, when Hashem tells him to go anoint David HaMelech, he says to Hashem, Shmuel, Eilech, Eilech. How do you expect me to go Vishama Shol Varagoni, and Shmuel will get wind of the fact that I'm coming to anoint David? Will kill me. What does Hashem tell him? Vayimar Hashem, Eglas Boker Tikach V'Yedacha, take a calf and pretend. V'Amartin, you'll say, Hashem Basi, I'm simply coming to bring a carbon. Apparently, even when one is ordered to do a mitzvah by Hashem, he's a shleich mitzvah of the highest degree, there's still a concern of sakana, because we're speaking about hezek, which is shchiach, hezek which is bound, so to speak, to come, and therefore it involves a nes to extract himself from it. And likewise, when it comes to the mezuzah, we take care to protect one from this type of sakana. Now, what type of designated room, what type of designation is considered dira, is considered bias, is considered bishorecha, and is chayiv in mezuzah? Here comes the sugi. Tani Rav Kahana, Kamed Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana presented this halacha in front of Rav Yehuda. Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaEtzim. So this is a brayse which says a Beis HaTeven, a hay storage room, Beis HaBakar, a room intended to keep some animals. It's not like a barn that the deer on a constant basis. It's really a stall. No, it's just a place where on occasion they'll keep an animal. Ubeis ha'etzim, a firewood storage room. Ubeis ha'oitris, a room in which you keep your oil, your wine. These aren't really designated for personal use. You don't actually live there. It's a supply room. It's auxiliary use. So it's serving a person, but in a roundabout way. P'turim min ha-mezuzah, they're not considered biased, not considered a place of dira, and therefore they're part of a mezuzah. The Brisa explains, you know why it's patur from mezuzah? Because women beautify themselves in there. What does that mean? What do you mean they beautify themselves? They rinse themselves there. Oh, now it's considered like a beis hamerchatz. It's a place which is used for a non-covered function. And we're going to learn later in the Gemara, when the use is einay shel kavod, then it is patur from mezuzah. So according to Rav Kahana, who was the one who presented this brisa, the reason why a storage room is patur from mezuzah is not because it's simply a storage room. A storage room is considered servicing the person, and it's considered a makom dira. But the reason why it's patur is because women use it for rechitza. It's considered a beis hamerchatz, and that downgrades its designation. It's not a makom covered. That makes it lose its significance. It's not considered a proper bais, a proper makom dira, and patur from mezuzah. But if it would be a simple, ordinary, typical storage room, of course it would be chayiv in mezuzah, because it's a service area. It's supplying a person with what he needs. It's considered like an annex to the home. So according to Rav Kahana, it would be chayiv in mezuzah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, he disagrees. He holds that only a place in which you actually live is chayiv mezuzah. But otherwise, if it's simply a supply room, that's not called a bayis, that's not called a place of dira. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ta'ama de rechtzes, do you mean to say it's only because they rinse there, and it's a mokim that's designated for a non-covered use, and that's why it's patur? But otherwise, it would be chayiv simply because of its being a storage room? That's not a reason to be mechayiv atanya. We learned in the brisa. Refes bakar p'turim and mezuzah. A barn is patur from mezuzah. Even though supplying the person with animals, a storage room is not considered a place which is chayiv from mezuzah. Ela mayna oisis. Rather, says Rabbi Yehuda, what does the brisa mean? That this storage room is a patur min mezuzah because noshim ani oisis ben beautify themselves in that room, which seems to indicate that that's the reason for patur, because they rinse there. But otherwise, if it's just a typical storage room, it's chayiv mezuzah, in support of Rav Kahana's opinion. So what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do with that brisa, which seems to indicate otherwise? Elamayna oisos, he says, no, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean they rinse themselves. And it's like a beis hamerchatz, which is patur. That's not the reason. Rather, mayna oisos miskashtos. It means that they go in there to apply their cosmetics. And the chiddush is, the brisa is simply saying like this: Afal pi shanoshim, afal pi. Even though it's not just a storage room, it's also serving for personal use. Shanoshim is kashtis mem. They go there to apply their makeup. Pturin, it's patur from mezuzah. Why? According to Rabbi Yehuda, since it's primarily designated as a storage room, you can't undo that designation. Just because you go in there occasionally to apply makeup, that doesn't change its designation. That doesn't upgrade it and turn it into a mokim bais, a mokim dira, which is chayiv mezuzah. So according to Rav Kahana, once again, a storage room is considered chayiv mezuzah, is considered a mokim dira because it's your supply room. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, no. Stam storage is not considered. And here the chiddush in the brisa is, even though they're going to use it occasionally for personal use as well, it's also patur. Omar Rav Kahana responds Rav Kahana to Rabbi Yehuda. How could you say that? V'shanoshim miskashtos ben pturim? A storage room which is used for miskashtos, to apply cosmetics, you're going to say that that's not enough to consider it a makom dira. It's still patur from mezuzah. Vatani, we have a brisa which tells us otherwise. Refes bakar p'tur min mezuzah. A barn is patur from mezuzah. However, v'shanoshim miskashtos ba chayeves b'mezuzah. But if women go in there to be miskashet, to apply their makeup, that changes the designation. It's considered designated somewhat for personal use, and it's chayev in mezuzah. That's a kasha on you. This is Rav Kahana speaking to Rabbi Yehuda. You're telling me that this occasional use, this nashim miskashtes, doesn't change the designation, doesn't undo the storage room effect, doesn't turn into a personal dwelling. Here we have a brisa which tells us otherwise. The fact that the Nashim go in there changes and upgrades its designation. Okay. Apparently you have to say it's a machlokes tanoim. Here we have a brisa which tells us the fact that women go in there to be miskashet turns it into a makam dira. Whereas in the previous brisa, we learned otherwise. That this nashim miskashtes aspect will not change things. It's machlokes tanoim. That works according to you. L'dinami stama tanoi. Says Rav Kahana, according to me as well. It's going to be machlokes tanoim regarding istam, storage room. Rav Yehuda had a kasha to Rav Kahana. He says, we have a brisa tells us that a storage room is pater from a mezuzah, a refes bakar, a barn, is pater from a mezuzah. In contrast to you, Rav Kahana, who says that a storage room is chayv mezuzah, says Rav Kahana, okay, it's machlokes tanoim. A stam, storage room, is just meant to store supplies, or let's say a barn, any of these areas, which services its owner, but it's not really a direct makam dira, because it doesn't actually reside in that room. Is a chayiv or not chayiv mezuzah? Machlokes tanoim. So let's stop for a moment. We discussed all these types of storage areas. Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBakar, Eitzeres Yain V'Shemen. So you have three levels really. If it's used as a Beis HaMerchatz as well, Nashim HaRoichtze is there, that downgrades it to a dira she'ina shal kavod, which is pater min ha-mezuzah regardless. Rav Kahana, Rav Yehuda both agree that it's pater. You have the middle step. You stam. It's just a typical storage room. According to Rav Kahana, it's a machlokes tanoim. And the question is whether a place which is meant to supply the person, is that considered a place of dwelling or not? Machlokes tanoim. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's completely pater. This person is not actually living in there. It's not a personal makam dira. There's no reason for it to be chayv mezuzah. We have the highest level, which is the storage area, which is also used for miskashtes. Women go in there to apply their makeup. So there is some sort of personal element, some element of personal use involved. According to Rav Kahana, that's enough to make it a makam dira, and there's no machlokes here. According to all shittas, it's chayv mezuzah. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, in this case, it's machlokes tanoim. The fact that they go in there occasionally, the fact that it's only used for residual type of use, miskashtes, it's not really a true makam dira, is that powerful enough to change, to upgrade the status of the storage room from a simple storage room, which according to Rabbi Yehuda is pater min ha-mezuzah, to a makam dira which is chayv mezuzah? It's machlokes tanoim. Continues the Gemara. Where do we find a clear presentation of this machlokes tanoim? Tanoi, the Sanya. Beis Sech. It says, Uchsaftam al mezuzah is beis secha u'visharecha. Says the Brisa. Beis cha miyuchad lach. It's yours. It's meant for your own personal use. The place where you live, where you eat, where you sleep. As opposed to storage rooms. Although they supply you, but it's not really your place of dwelling. Prat. Beis HaTeven, except for a hay storage area. Beis HaBakar, a place where you place your animals. Beis HaEitzim, firewood storage room. Beis HaEitzeres, a place where you keep your wine, oil supply. She'peturim na-mezuzah, these places are pater from mezuzah. V'yesh mechayv. Some say it's chayv mezuzah. So right here, we have a machlokes tanoim. Whether these storage rooms are pater or chayv. The Brisa concludes, be'emes amru. Usually be'emes denotes like halacha meshem Sinai, something which is a clear-cut halacha, undisputed halacha. Not necessarily halacha meshem Sinai, but an undisputed halacha. Be'emes amru. Beis HaKisei, Beis HaBursaki, a tanner's shop. Ubeis HaMerchatz, a bathhouse, Ubeis HaTfilah. Visha Noshim ne'oises behen, a place where Noshim are ne'oises, which the Gemara soon will define for us. All these places are mekoimes she'enan shel kavod, not meant for respectable use, and they're peturim min ha-mezuzah. So we have a brisa, begins with a machlokes regarding storage rooms, it concludes with a universal halacha. Beis HaKisei, Beis HaMerchatz, are pater min ha-mezuzah. How do we explain the brisa? We have two approaches. Rav Kahana's approach, Rav Yehuda's approach, and each one will interpret the Brisa according to his perspective. Rav Kana will interpret the Brisa according to his approach. His approach being that a stam storage room, some hold as chayiv mezuzah, some hold as pater. Rav Yehuda will interpret the Brisa according to his approach. That a stam storage room, according to all shittas, is pater. Explains the Gemara. Rav Kana will interpret the Brisa according to his perspective. Brisa begins. It says Beisecha. We know from there your home, designated for personal use. Beischam yuchad lecha, prat. LeBeis HaTeven, LeBeis HaBakar, all these storage areas, LeBeis HaEitzim, LeBeis HaEitzrois, Shepturim, Min HaMezuzah Bistam. Your typical storage room is pater from mezuzah, v'yesh shemachayvim bistam. Some say no. Even a stam storage room, it's meant to supply you with your needs. It's considered beisecha. Why shouldn't it be chayv and mezuzah? So we have machlokes tanaim. This is Rav Kana's version of things. Stam storage room, machlokes. And the Brisa concludes be'emes amru, beis hakisi, beis habursaki, the tanner's room, beis hamerchatz, bathhouse, beis hatfila, vish hanoshim ne'oises man, and also a place where women are ne'oises. Umay ne'oises, what does ne'oises mean? Roichatzos. They rinse there, so it's a storage room, let's say. But it's also used for rechitza. It becomes like a beis hamerchatz. All these places are pturim and mezuzah. So this is Rav Kana's version. Your typical storage room, perhaps is chayim, perhaps is not. It's a machlekes. But a place which is used for a shimush she'eni shel kavod, or a kisa, beis hamerchatz, or even a storage room which is used also for rechitzas nashim, is patur and mezuzah. And that's what the Brisa meant by Shan Asham Ne'oises Ben. It's a beis hamerchatz, and therefore it's patur. That's the case. Why do we have a double reference to beis hamerchatz in the Brisa? We already mentioned beis hamerchatz. Why go over it again? Shan Asham Ne'oises Ben, they rinse there. Why the duplication? If that's the case, Hainu merchatz. We already mentioned merchatz. So there's a chiddush in both. Ashmina merchatz, the rabbin. The Brisa presented a case of a public bathhouse. Ashmina merchatz the yachid, and also a private bathhouse. Perhaps I would distinguish between the two. Perhaps I would say merchatz the rabbin, public bathhouse, the novish, zome, which is extremely unclean. Yeah, that's why it's patur ben mezuzah. It's not a covered area, not a covered use. Aval merchatz the yachid, but a privately used bathhouse. So novish zome, which is only slightly unclean. Perhaps it would be chayv mezuzah. Kamash malon, that's the chiddush of the Brisa. In either case, it is patur from mezuzah. It's not a dira shel kavod, and therefore it's exempted, as we're going to see in the Gemara Amud Beis. So again, this is Rav Kana's approach. A storage room perhaps is chayv mezuzah, perhaps is patur. It's machlokes tanaim whether a storage room which supplies one with his needs, is that considered like a makam dira or not? Machlokes. But if it's used for a tashmish she'ena shel kavod, like a beis hamerchatz, all agree there's no chayv mezuzah. But let's say this storage room also has an occasional visitor. The isha comes in there to apply her cosmetics. According to Rav Kahana, all agree that that's considered like a makam dira, that's been upgraded to your personal space, and is chayv mezuzah. Rabbi Yehuda will interpret the Brisa according to his perspective. Hachitani, this is how the Brisa reads. Beisecha, what does that teach us? Beischam yuchad lecha. Has to be something designated for your use. Prata beis hateven, except for storage areas which are not personal use areas. Beis hateven, this hay storage room, a beis habakar, a place for the animals, a beis ha'eitzim, beis ha'eitzos, shepturin min hamezuzah. Afilu miskashtes. So it's certainly patur from mezuzah, because a storage area is not a malkam dira, it's not a bias. There's no machlekes on that. The Brisa continues. And the Brisa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is not referred to your typical storage room, meaning it's also your typical room, but even afilu maskashtes, the chiddush is not only a typical beis habakar, beis ha'eitzim, beis ha'oitzos is patur mezuzah. What the Brisa means to say is afilu maskashtes, your standard beis hateven. That's number one. And even if it's used for the isha, who goes in there and applies her cosmetics. Why? Because according to this shita, you can't redesignate, you can't transform a storage room into a place of personal use. It's not considered a dwelling. It's not considered a place of residence. It's been established, it's been earmarked as a storage room, as a barn. That's it. And therefore it's pater from mezuzah. And on this we have a machlokes. On this aspect only. If it's also shared by a person, v'yesh mechayv, b'miskashtes. If it's used by a person as well, the isha goes in there for personal use. The shita of yesh mechayv and say, yeah, that does something to that place. That upgrades it. That gives it a status, somewhat of a status of a makom dir. Aval stam diver kol potter. But if it's just an undefined, it's just a typical storage room which is not frequented by the isha, certainly potter from mezuzah. It's just a supply room. It's a storage room. It's not beis secha. It's not miyuchad lecha. You don't actually live there. You don't eat or sleep there. This is Rabbi Yehuda speaking. He holds that a storage area, according to all shittas, is potter. It's only when it's also used for personal use. Then we have a machlokes. Some say chayim, some say potter. The Brisa concludes by Amas Amru. This is an agreed upon halacha, Beis HaKisei, Beis HaBursaki, all these areas which are non-covered designated areas. In these areas, even if women will go in there to be miskashet, it won't really change matters. Because of its excessive dirt and the fact that it's so unclean, that makes it a mokim she'ein shel kavod, which exempts it from mezuzah, despite the fact that an isha will go in there to be miskashet. That doesn't change matters, and still potter from a mezuzah. So again, in summation, according to Rav Kahana, a stam storage room, some say it's chayiv, some say it's potter. If it's also used for the nashim to be miskashet, all agree that's enough to consider it a makam dir. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, a stam storage room, all agree is potter min hamezuzah. It's just a supply room. It's not a place where you actually live. If, however, it's also used by the nashim to miskashet, that added element perhaps upgrades it. We have machlokes whether it's chayiv or potter from mezuzah. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda stama divrei kol potter. Is that so? That according to Rabbi Yehuda, your typical storage room is potter from mezuzah according to all shitas? Because he holds if it's not for personal use, there's no havamin. There's nobody that holds that it's chayiv from in mezuzah. Vatani, we learned in a brisa otherwise. The brisa clearly presents a shita that holds that a storage room is chayiv in mezuzah. The pasuk says bish orech chsavtam al mezuzah besecha uvish orech. We learn from here all different types of gateways and entranceways are chayiv in mezuzah. Echad shari batim, echad shari chatzeres, echad shari medinas, these walled provinces, echad shari yoris, gateways of cities, ve'refes, and a barn, ve'lulan, entranceway to the chicken coops, u'madben, entranceway to a hay storage area, places where you keep your wine and oil, chayav and mezuzah. All these things are considered makom dir. They're considered ubisharech. It's part of you. It's part of your makom dir. It's serving a person. So although it's not actually a direct makom dir, it's an auxiliary makom dir, and therefore it's included in the word bisharecha and chayiv mezuzah. We clearly have a shita which is mechayiv these places in mezuzah. In contrast, with Rabbi Yehuda, who tells us that according to all shitas, a storage area is not a makom dir, it's potter. Let's continue with the brayse. Yochel marbe av beis shar. So that's the case. We have such a long list of places that are chayiv mezuzah. Perhaps we're going to include the following as well: a beis shar. Beis shar was generally describing a little guard house at the entranceway to the courtyard where the guard would stand. So the entryway to that room, to that guardhouse, is really not an entryway to the chutzah. This beis shar is just serving the chutzah. It's a walkthrough to the chutzah. It's a point of access to the chutzah. So this beis shar itself doesn't need a mezuzah. Achsadra, or the some sort of terrace or walkway going into the leading up to the homes, or merpeses, or a porch. So we're speaking like an outdoor porch. Sometimes you drive down the road, you see these cheap motels. So they have the outdoor porches. You go up these steps, and on that porch you can access the rooms of the motel. That's the merpeses, which is described many times in Shas. So suppose these areas, the Shar, the Achsadra, the merpeses, have some sort of doorway entering and accessing them. So you enter the merpeses through a Shar. It's patur from mezuzah. Why? Says the Brisa, perhaps I would include them. No, Talmud Loim Abayis. The pasuk says, "Mezuzah beisech abayis." What does that teach us? Ma bayis miyuchad l'dir. Just as bayis denotes something which is designated for a dwelling, as a place of residence. That's what's chayv mezuzah. Yotzu Eila, as opposed to these areas, which are simply access points to the home or to the chutzner, etc., don't have their own designation. They're not considered places of dwelling. She'en miyuchad l'dir. And therefore, the Beishar, the Achsad, and Merpeses themselves are patur from mezuzah. Continues the Brisa. What about the following list? Yochal shani marba af beis hakisei. Perhaps I'll include in the chiv mezuzah beis hakisei, beis habursaki, a tanner's house, or beis hamerchatz, a bathhouse, or beis hatfila. Talmud Loim Bayis. The pasuk once again says bayis, and we learn ma bayis also lekovet. So we finally got to that drush. Bayis denotes something which is meant for respectable use, significant use. Af kol also lekovet. Likewise, anything else which is chayv mezuzah is only if it's asur lekovet, meant for covered use. Yotzu elo, as opposed to these rooms, beis hakisei, etc., shein asurim lekovet, they're not meant for covered use. Therefore, they don't have the chashivas of a bayis. They don't have that significance. They're not a true bayis, a true makam dira, and patur from mezuzah. Continues the Brisa, yochal shani marba af harabayis. Perhaps I'll include on this list harabayis. V'halishka is the rooms throughout the Beis Hamikdash. V'azora is the azoras around the Beis Hamikdash. That the entrance point into these areas will be chayiv mezuzah. Talmud Loim Bayis. Once again, we look at bayis. And what's your typical bayis? It's not the Beis Hamikdash. Ma bayis shuchel. Just as bayis referring typically to a non-Migdash entity, and therefore it's chayiv mezuzah. Af kol shuchel. Likewise, anything else is only chayiv mezuzah if it is chayil. It's not kodesh. Yatzu Eilo, as opposed to these, shein kodesh, they're kodesh, and therefore the patur from mezuzah. Tiyufta. So this is a refutation of Rabbi Yehuda, who tells us that there is no shita in the world that would suggest that a storage room has a mezuzah. Look at this Brisa. The Brisa begins with a whole list of storage areas: refes bakar, and lulin, and matpin, oises yayin, which are chayiv mezuzah. So it's a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda, and a writer of God who says that indeed there's a machlekes regarding a storage room. Some say chayiv, some say patur, and this Brisa follows the shita. It says chayiv. Tani Rav Yehuda bar Yehuda kamei de Rav. Tani Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda kamei de Rav. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda presented the following list in front of Rav. Shisha sha'arim pturim. I have at least 6 gateways that are patur from mezuzah. Pturim and a mezuzah. What are they? Beis HaTeven, the hay storage room, Beis HaBakar, a place where they would keep the animals, or Beis HaEitzim, firewood storage room, Beis HaOitzreis, a place where you keep your food supply, wine, oil, etc. So apparently he's following the shita that says patur. Okay. Ushar Hamadi. The next on the list is the Shar Hamadi, this domed, this archway, patur from mezuzah. V'shar she'eina makura. And likewise, a gateway, an entrance which has no top, it just has side post without a top. V'shar she'eina gavayud. And a shar which is not 10 tefachim high. So the minimum height requirement of a Pesach for mezuzah is 10 tefachim. We know just as a mechitza must be at least 10 tefachim in height. Because we're learning more sukkah that the rishus rises up until 10 tefachim. It's considered the same area, the same domain. And therefore, if you want to separate the area into two, you have to go up until 10 tefachim, which separates the complete rishus, which rises 10 tefachim. Likewise, a Pesach. If you want to create an entranceway, you have to leave an area of 10 tefachim high, open and exposed and accessible. If it's less than 10 tefachim in height, you haven't really created an access point to the rishus. So that's why we get this halacha that a Pesach has to be at least 10 tefachim in height. Problem is, he gave him a list of 7, where he mentioned really 6 at the outset. Amalei, he responded, this was Rava, Patachta b'shisha, you initiated with the number 6. V'salkas v'shiva. So paschas v'shisha. Initially you said, I'm giving you a list of 6. Sha'arim that are potter. V'salkas v'shiva, and concluded with 7. How's that? He told him, Shara Madi Tanai. That's because the Shara Madi item on the list is not agreed upon by all. It's machlokes Tanai. I meant 6 cases agreed upon by all that are potter. And there's another one which is machlokes Tanai. What exactly is this Shara Madi, this archway? And why would it be potter from mezuzah? The sun. Kippah, an archway. A round, domed entranceway. Rabbi Chayv mezuzah? Rabbi says it's Chayv mezuzah. The Chachamim Poitrim, Chacham say it's potter. The Bryce concludes, Vishavan all agree. Shem yesh beragla asara. Shechayevas b'mezuzah. That if the legs are 10 tefachim high, it's Chayv mezuzah. What does this mean? We're speaking about an archway, a circular entranceway, which narrows. Now, halacha is that just as the minimum height of a Pesach is 10 tefachim, the minimum width of a Pesach is 4 tefachim. We learn this in Shabbos and Erevin. That's the minimum dimension of a Pesach to be considered a Pesach, and a Pesach for mezuzah as well. If it's not a Pesach, there's no mezuzah. So we have an archway which starts off being wide enough, 4 tefachim wide enough, but then it narrows. It narrows to the point that we don't have 4 tefachim width in that space, in that gap, in the actual Pesach, in the entranceway. Bryce concludes that all agree, Shemesh beragla asara, there's a leg portion, meaning the bottom part of this archway, where in between those legs you have a space of 4 tefachim, which is a proper dimension of a Pesach. Of that space, if those posts rise 10 tefachim high, and then begins to narrow, you're okay. Because the lower portion of that Pesach contains the dimension of Pesach. There's a space, an entry point of 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. V'shavin, if the legs of the posts, which are 4 tefachim apart, are 10 tefachim high, then it's chayiv mezuzah. So when then is there a machlokes? Between Rameir who says chayiv, and Chacham say potter. When? The Gemara explains. Amar Abai. The Kuli Alma all agree in the following case: Gevoya Yud, ve'em b'ragla Gimel. Suppose the entire structure of this dome, of this archway, is 10 tefachim high. Ve'em b'ragla Gimel, but the posts, what we call the raglayim, which are 4 tefachim apart, rise up from the ground to the point of less than 3 tefachim. You know, 3 tefachim, less than 3 tefachim is love. It's considered like part of the ground, as though the ground is rising up. They have no significance. You haven't really created anything if the posts are less than 3 tefachim in height. So in that case, you don't even have the initiation of a sheer Pesach. Because true, the posts on bottom of your entranceway are situated 4 tefachim apart, but they don't rise high enough to constitute an initiation of an entranceway. They're less than 3 tefachim. It's like part and parcel of the ground. So in that case, says Abai, all agree there's no Pesach here. Dukuli alma gevoya yud. So the entire structure is 10 tefachim high. However, ve'em b'ragla gimel, but the legs, which are 4 tefachim apart, don't rise to a height of 3 tefachim. V'lav klumi. There's nothing here. All agree there's no Pesach, there's no mezuzah. Inami, alternatively, yesh b'ragla gimel. Suppose the posts, which are 4 tefachim apart, do rise up 3 tefachim from the ground. So you have that initiation of a Pesach. However, ve'ena gvayu gimel, yud. But the entire structure is not 10 tefachim in height. You don't even have a potential Pesach. You don't even have 10 tefachim in height. V'lav klumi, in this case as well, all agree there's no Pesach, there's no mezuzah. When is there machlokes? The machlokes is only Ella in the following case. B'gvoya yud, suppose the entire structure is 10 tefachim high. V'yesh b'ragla gimel. And those posts rising from the ground, which are 4 tefachim apart, they contain a height of 3 tefachim. But then they begin to narrow. They begin to curve towards each other. Ve'ein b'ruch v'gdalet. And once they begin to slant towards each other, to create that arch, that dome, they narrow to the point that there's no 4 tefach gap any longer between the posts. So they start off wide apart, they rise, let's say 3 tefachim, and then they begin to narrow and face each other. In which case, you lose your 4 tefach width. However, v'yesh ba lochuk lashlim l'arba. You have wall material around this arch. It's not like just an arch, a bare arch, like the St. Louis arch. It's a building, a structure. So you have wall material around the arch. It's just that the hole, the actual entryway, is a narrow arch. Begins wide, but then narrows on top. V'yesh ba, within the wall material you have lochuk, you can potentially carve out lashlim l'arba, to complete, to be mashlim the shear, to give you the additional width for that Pesach. So the actual entryway is narrow, at least in the upper portion of it. But perhaps you can say, since there is potential to carve it out, to extend the Pesach, let's take a look at this Pesach and say, well, this has a sheer Pesach. It has that significance of a Pesach because you have where to begin from. The lower portion has a proper sheer Pesach. It's 4 tefachim wide, and it rises high enough to have chashivas, past 3 tefachim from the ground below. So let's continue it further. Now, although we're blocked by wall, okay, we haven't gotten around to pulling out the wall material. Since it has that potential, since it can expand and extend into the wall, therefore this Pesach is considered a Pesach chashav. We view it as though the actual entryway is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. That's Shittas Rameir. Rameir said, "Choykikun lahashlam." We virtually carve out the wall material to complete the required shear of the Pesach, and therefore it's chayiv mezuzah. Rabbanan Savri ein choykin lahashlam. We don't do that. We look at reality. If it's too narrow, it's not a Pesach. So, in conclusion, we have many cases regarding mezuzah. Some cases, the entryway is chayiv mezuzah, such as Shari Batim, Shari Chatzeres, Shari Medina, Shari Yoris. We have some cases where it's pater from mezuzah. For instance, Beishar, this guardhouse in front of the Chatzer, Achsadra, this terrace, this canopied area leading into the home, Mirpesas, this outdoor porch through which you access the rooms of the hotel or whatever. So these places are not considered miyuchad ladira, simply access points to the dira beyond them. Therefore, they're not chayiv mezuzah. Beis HaKisei, the place of the Bursaki works, the Beis HaMerchas, Beis HaTfilah, these are not places of kavod and pater as well. Harabayis, the Lishkas, Nazaris, they're mekaymes kodesh, and for mezuzah you need a bayis chol. Then we learned that a shar which has no top to it, it's ain't a makura. Well, as the Rambam learns, we're speaking that the room into which you enter from that, through that door, has no ceiling. That place is not chayiv mezuzah. Or if the Pesach is not 10 tefachim high. In all these cases, there's no chayiv mezuzah. We have some cases where there's a machlokes. Shar Amadi, as we just discussed. If you have a narrow archway, the question is, do we say choykikin lahashlam? Do we virtually carve out the wall material to complete the required dimension of that Pesach? Rabbi says yes. Chacham say no. We had the storage areas, Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBakar, Yitzhak Yain V'Shemen. Gemara concluded there as well. We have a machlekes tanoim whether a supply room, a storage area, a service area is considered chayiv mezuzah. And in the Gemara coming up now, we're going to have a question, a machlekes regarding Beis HaKnesses. Continues the Gemara Tana Rabban. Up until now we discussed various types of entranceways, as far as dimensions, as far as use. Now we're going to move over to different types of ownerships. Tana Rabban, Beis HaKnesses. What about a shul, or Beis HaIsha, a home owned by a woman, or Beis HaShutfen, a place owned by partners? All these places are chayeves b'mezuzah. Of course, as well pshita. Why would I think otherwise? Yeah, perhaps I can say. The pasuk says, "Uchsavtam al mezuzos beisecha lashon yachid, beisecha v'loy beisa." So first we'll say, beisecha is you, a man. See the parsha that speaks about tefillin. It's directed at anoshim. Perhaps it's coming to include her home. Beisecha v'loy beisa. Likewise, we can say beisecha v'loy beitayam. Only your home. lashon yochid, but not something owned by partners. And therefore, we'll pater the Beis Isha, Beis Hashutfim, Kamash Malon. That's what the Bryce informs us. It's not so. All these homes are chayav. Maybe you're right. Maybe we went to exclude the Beis Isha, Beis Hashutfim. Amakra, the pasuk says, "Leman yirbu yemecha, yimei v'necha." Whoever wants to live long, affix a mezuzah on your doorpost. This will generate long life for yourself and your children. How can you exempt the Isha? How can you exclude the Isha and deprive her of this opportunity? Hani bo chai. These require life. Vani lebo chai. Women, partners, they don't want life? Of course they do. And therefore, it's illogical that the Torah would exempt them and exclude them. Ella beis chalam. If that's the case, what are we going to do with the diuk? Beis secha. What is it coming to exclude? It's coming to teach us kedurav, damarav. On which side of the doorpost do you fix the mezuzah? On the right side. Because it says, Ochsavtam al mezuzah is beis secha. And we learn a drasha, derech bi ascha. The way you go in. V'chi akar inish kari. When a person lifts his foot to enter the home, which one does he lift first? Akar, the yamina akar b'reisha, his right foot. He lifts first. So he relates to the right side when he goes in. And therefore that's the side that will feature the mezuzah. That's called derech bi ascha, the way he walks in. And that's one from Beis Secha. But of course, it's not coming to be Mai, the Isha, the Shutf. Tani Idach, we learned in a Brisa elsewhere, a related discussion regarding Tumas Negoyim. A home has a nega, it's tamei. What type of home? Owned by whom? Beis HaKnesses, or Beis HaShutfim, or Beis HaIsha, Metamen B'Negoyim. All these homes, if they feature a nega, they become tamei. Not only if it's owned by a Yochid, a man, even owned by an Isha, Beis HaKnesses, owned by partners. Pshita, of course, why would I think otherwise? Perhaps I would say, the pasuk describes this fellow arriving at the Kohen's home and he says, look, I have a nega. Uba ashaloi habayis. The fellow who owns the home with a nega comes to the Kohen to tell him about the nega. Uba ashaloi habayis. Perhaps you can say, loi. It's his, it belongs to him. But loi la, not to her. A home owned by an Isha is exempt from nega. Or we can say, loi. Only if it's his, but it belongs to partners, it's potter. So we're going to be made to Beis Isha, Beis Hashutfim, Kamash Malon. The Bryce informs us it's not so. Even Beis Isha, Beis Hashutfim is chayiv mezuzah. How do you know? Maybe you're right. Lawyers come to exclude all these cases. You can't say that. Omakra, bebeis eretz achuzaschem. You find a nega in the home of your estate. Achuzaschem. It's plural, all inclusive, including the Isha and the Shutf. Ela loy lomli. Why then does the pasuk choose the word loy, ubasha loy abayis, to describe the homeowner? Misha miyachad beis loy. It's coming to teach us. Who can experience a nega? Hashem gives it to a person who's miyachad beis loy. He's stingy. He designates his home and all his possessions strictly for personal use. She'eino yiroitzel lahashal kelim. He doesn't want to lend out his kelim. He pretends, he says, I don't have. He's sar ayin. He's stingy. What does Hashem do to him? HaKadosh Baruch Hu mefarsim. Hashem publicizes what he really has. When he has to vacate his home, take out all his possessions, everybody says, I thought you didn't have a lawnmower. Look, sitting right there. The person who has a neg has to do that, to clean out his home. He has to move out all his belongings. And that's a fitting einish to this fellow who pretended that he doesn't have the kli to loan others. Prat lamashal keil acherim, as opposed to a person who is careful to be generous and loans out his kelim to others. This fellow doesn't need to go through this treatment, and therefore he will be protected from the guy. So the word shaloi abayis is coming to teach us this limud, that a nega comes on account of being stingy. Let's take a look at Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom. His possessions are designated for his personal use. And doesn't lend them out. The Torah is teaching us that tzoros ayin, stinginess, generates negoim. Continues the Gemara, is that so that a shul can become tummy through a nega? Vatanya. Yachal you batik nesius, ubatim medrashis, mitama benagoyim. Perhaps a shul, a beis medrash, will become tummy through a nega. Tamaloyma, basha loy habayis. What do we learn from here? Mishum yuchad loy. Loy tells you it's designated for his, as his place of dwelling, as his makam dira. It's a private dira. That's why there's a nega. That's why there's a tumas nega. Yotzu elo, as opposed to beis knesset, beis medrash, shein yuchad loy, which are not designated for individuals' use. It services the crowd, the rabbim, and therefore is not chayven. Therefore is not a potential tumah. Doesn't have potential tumas negoyim. So I have a stira between the two brises. One brise says that beis hakneses can become tummy through a nega. The other brise says no. Like kasha, the answer is like this. We already learned that a home owned by partners, beis hashutfin, is chayven mezuzah and is tummy b'negoyim. What about a shul? See, really, a shul is in a class of its own. It's not just a partnership. It's designated for public use. It's accessed by the rabbim. That's the shaila. Is that considered like a beis hashutfin, or is it in a different category and is not included in the chiv of mezuzah or tumas negoyim? It's actually a machlokes. Rameya says yes, chacham say no. And that will be the resolution of this theory. We have one brayso which says a beis hakneses can become tummy through negoyim. One says not. Like kash, the answer is harav mei rabbanon. Rameya says yes, rabbanon say no. The Sanya will learn in the brayso beis hakneses sheyesh beis dira lechazan hakneses. A beis hakneses which features also a place of dwelling for the chazan hakneses, for the attendant, for the shams. All agree in this case chayv mezuzah because it's a makam dira. There's no machlekes there. V'she'ein bo beis dira. What if it doesn't have a makam dira for the shams? It's just a typical shul. Rabbi Machayev, he says it's chayv mezuzah. V'chacham poikim, they say it's exempt. Likewise, by negoyim, we have the same discussion. Rabbi will say chayv negoyim. It's like a place hashutfin, and the rabbanon say no. It's pater from nega because it's different than a makam hashutfin. It's a public area, and there's no din of negoyim, which we'll discuss at great length in the upcoming daf Be'ez Hashem. That's one teretz. One is Rameya, one is Rabban. We both say another teretz. Hava Rabban. Both prices reflect the Rabban. Well, the kasha, the answer is very simple. Depends if it has a beis dira for the chazan. How is ba beis dira? The brayso which says that a beis hakneses can become tummy through a nega is where it has a beis dira. It's considered like a place of dwelling. Hod less ba beis dira. The other brayso which says pater from nega is where it doesn't have a beis dira for the chazan. Therefore, it's a typical shul which is pater from nega. We boisim another pshat. Both brayso are discussing the leis ba beis dira. There's no beis dira there. It's a typical shul. The question is, where is it situated? Vada krachim, the brayso which says this shul is pater from mezuzah, speaking about a shul sitting in a large city, which is meant to be accessed by the public at large, and it's not considered as though this shul really has designated owners. It's like an ownerless shul, and it's not considered mezuzah peisecha visharecha. There's no chiv mezuzah. Vada kfarim, the other brayso which says we treat it like an ordinary home, is speaking that it's in a small town, and it's considered like a partnership. It's owned by the townspeople, and therefore it's considered a beis hashutfin, which is chayv mezuzah, could become tamei through negoyim. And even the Rabbanan would agree in this case, it's no worse than a chas hashutfin. So conclusion, we learned about a beis hakneses, is a chayv mezuzah, could become coming through a nega. Well, it depends. If there's a beis dira for the chazan there, then the shul is considered a makam dira, and we treat it as such. If it has no beis dira for the chazan, Rameya says, that's like a beis hashutfin, chayv mezuzah. Chum say no. It's an undesignated entity, and there's no chayv mezuzah. All agree in the case of a shul in a kfar, we consider it no worse than a chasar shutfin, and as chayv mezuzah can become tamei through a nega. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We learned that there's a chayv mezuzah in all types of gateways: shari batim, shari chatzeres, medinos, and ayaris. In some cases, there's no chayv mezuzah. For instance, a beis sharm, the guardhouse leading into the chatzar, the achsadra leading into the home, the repesas, the porch leading into those rooms. In which case, they're not considered a makam dira. Is just an access point. Beis hakise, beis habursaki, beis hamerchas, beis hatfila. These are not places shall covet. Harabayis, lishkes, and azaris. They're makam is kodesh. A door that has no roof, or which is not 10 tefachim high, does not constitute a pesach for chiv mezuzah. And machlekes will apply in the following cases: shar madei, that archway, where Rameya says we virtually carve out the wall to add space and reach the proper dimensions for that Pesach, Chum say, no, we don't do that. We look at practicality. If it doesn't conform, it's pot. A storage room, Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaOitris, Machlekes Hanaim, whether a service area is considered like a Makam Dira and a Chayv Mezuzah. And finally, we had a Machlekes regarding Beis HaKnesses. We learned that Bedika of a Mezuzah is required twice in 7 years. If it's a Mezuzah Shal Yachid, Mezuzah Shal Rab will make it twice in 50 years. Chachamim suspended the Chiv Mezuzah by the entranceway to the city where there's a Chashash of Sakana, and we learned that a Beis HaShutfen, a Beis HaIsha, certainly is Chayv Mezuzah. The Pasuk says, L'man Yibru Yameichem, which applies to all equally. All the best and much hatzlacha to you.